was so enthusiastic about today's adventure that I decided I'm going to do it myself next summer, and I want you to come with me. I mentioned this Costa Rica Coast to Coast adventure in last month's newsletter, and 7 of you have already said you wanted to come. So if you're interested, be sure to reach out to me at kit@activetraveladventures.com and let me know. I'll send you all the details once I get things firmed up so you can decide whether this is the right trip for you. Space is going to be limited to 12 people, including me, so be sure you get on the list. And actually, the more I was thinking about it, the response to that mention in my newsletter was so strong that it got me thinking, why don't I let you know about more of my trips to see if you want to come along? I'd love the company. I think it would be a blast. So just so you know, in 2022, I'm planning not only to go to Costa Rica, but I'm going to be heading down to Central and South America. As you know, I sold my business and my house, so I'm basically a vagabond right now, and I'm hoping to do a lot of extensive long-term travel. So in that area, once I get down to the Costa Rica area, I'm going to be going to the Galapagos, I'm going to Ecuador, I'm going to climb Machu Picchu and hike Patagonia, in addition to just kind of wandering around some of the other different countries. I know I'll be doing 4 tours for sure. So if you're interested, well, actually 5 of the Costa Rica. So if you're interested in any of those, be sure to reach out and let me know. You can reach me at kit@activetraveladventures.com, and I'll make sure that you get the details once I know them. So let's find out why I'm so enthusiastic about the new Costa Rica Camino. So let's get started. I was on Facebook and I ran across a woman by the name of Conchita's post about hiking a long distance trail in Costa Rica. And I was fascinated because I've been to Costa Rica several times, never heard about this trail. So I immediately direct messaged her and said, would you come on the program? And until I did the homework for this show, I truly knew nothing about it. So Conchita, welcome to the program. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Kit. I'm really honored to be here, and it's a great opportunity to be able to share this wonderful experience that I had just this past December.
So before we even talk about the trail itself, could we get a little bit of a sense of who you are, if you wouldn't mind telling us your age and maybe your experience in doing this kind of adventure?
So my age is probably the most important fact. I chose to do this trek in order to be able to celebrate my 70th birthday. The point in Costa Rica that is closest to where I was born, which is in Santiago de Cuba, 70 years ago on January 2nd. And so I set off on December 15th to be able to accomplish it. And I'm originally from Cuba, but lived most of my life, like many Cuban Americans, in the United States. And I married a Costa Rican. And so when we retired, we came to his home country. And so we've been here. And for my 60th birthday, I did Compostela, El Camino de Compostela. And so it was like almost, not very difficult to connect the dot. You have this beautiful Camino in northern Spain that people are enjoying. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so we were right after that moving to Costa Rica. And most Costa Ricans who do El Camino de Compostela, de Santiago de Compostela, say, well, why don't we have something like this in Costa Rica? So basically, when we got here, we started connecting with other hikers who had done Compostela, and we sort of joined forces and started to design and promote this Camino. And it's really inspired by Compostela, but quite different, of course.
Yes, and when I was reading the website, which I'm going to link to this in the show note, this is a nonprofit association that is actually, in addition to making a beautiful long-distance trail that takes you through rural Costa Rica, you're actually showcasing some of the smaller villages and the non-touristy places of Costa Rica. So it's a two-part thing. It's part hike, but part also to help these rural communities enjoy some of the benefits of tourism and showing off your country.
Exactly. Could you hit? And that was always the difficult thing because we needed to be able to convey both things. This is really for hikers, but it chose a route through Costa Rica that would benefit rural families that don't get the huge amount of tourist dollars that come to Costa Rica. As you well know, there's some wonderful places that many, many people come to Costa Rica to visit. But where the Camino de Costa Rica travels through are places that most people don't know. They're small towns that are basically depopulated because there was very little employment there. And so by doing the Camino, by being able to eventually bring hikers to the Camino, we will be bringing basically a new source of income for those rural families. And they are wonderful. The hikers who have done the Camino say that it's the people along the Camino that is most extraordinary. They're so warm. Obviously, they're very, very grateful that people are visiting them, because even if they can just cook some rice and beans for them, it's a little income that really does help them.
And the Ticos themselves have a tradition of just being hospitable and friendly. And this is such a brilliant idea. It's brilliant that one of the great things about travel is meeting local people, but it can be difficult. And this, you're just combining like all my great loves in this one trail. And I'm so excited to do it. In fact, I want to get a whole group of us together and do it. Well, but I guess we probably should back up. Where does the trail start and go? And why don't you give us just a synopsis of the trail itself so we know how long it is, where it goes, and just kind of define it for us a bit.
Okay, great. So the trail was designed to optimize the fact that Costa Rica has both the Pacific and the Atlantic at its shores. So we thought the idea of saying from the Atlantic to the Pacific was the one that would capture people's imagination the most. You know, the Europeans are always trying to get from the Atlantic over to the Far East. So we're really trying to leverage that imagination of people wanting to cross from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And so we say that it starts in the Atlantic. Costa Ricans want it to be called the Caribbean, which it is technically. So it goes from the shores of the Caribbean in these little fishing villages called Barra de Parismina and Barra de Pacuare. And then it crosses the whole country. First, it goes up to the mountains near the Caribbean, crosses indigenous lands. Then it goes through a valley. It's called the Valley of Angostura. And then it goes back up the mountains through a part that's called Tapanti, and then into the beautiful Valley of Orosi, and then again up to the mountains to the highest point, which is 2,400 meters, about 7,800 feet. And then it goes through all of the coffee region of Costa Rica called Tarrazú. And then it drops back down into the Pacific to end near the beautiful park Manuel Antonio that most people have visited by the shores of the Pacific. So that's the way it crosses. It's 280 kilometers. And the cumulative ascent is almost it's 9,000 feet. So it's a challenging trek, but it's doable. I mean, if a 70-year-old, not particularly athletic person like me can do it. Now, I broke it up into 19 days because obviously, because of COVID, I'm here in Costa Rica. We are not going to travel any place during the December time. We weren't going to travel until we get the vaccine. So we decided that this was the right time to do this for me. And since most of these sections are very isolated, we were the only ones at these lodges, basically. But it is 280 kilometers. It's got 5 microclimates. So we were freezing to death in the high mountains, and nice and warm on the two extremes at the sea level sections of the trail.
For those that aren't very good with their metric system, it's about just under 150 miles. So it's a good.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
that's okay. Yeah. So 280 kilometers is roughly 145 miles. And to me, that's like the perfect length trail because it's long enough that it's a long distance hike, but it's short enough that it's doable in pretty much in a vacation time period.
Yeah. So we had a group of young people in their early 30s who did it in 12 days last January. And now there's a group that's doing it in 10 days, and they're basically mountain hikers, and they're going to do it in 10 days. We had this wonderful, wonderful young woman, Sandra Mejia, who's a ultra marathon person, and she did it in November, I think it was. She crossed to raise funds for the poor families. They have this thing that you can buy, the basic staples for a family. And so she organized this, and she did the Camino de Costa Rica in 68 hours and 15 minutes. She was really amazing. She was really amazing.
But I personally like to do it slower so we can stop.
Me too.
So much to see there because you've got great wildlife. The landscape is outstanding. I think Costa Rica ranks as one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. And I've pretty well traveled to be able to say that. About how many people have actually done this trail? Are you keeping track at all? Do you have like a stamp book like they do in Santiago?
Well, we should be much better. We try to keep track because since the trail has to be done really with a guide, so we have the guides giving us information, and I sort of add it up and other people add it up, but we need to get much better at that. But an estimate is about 500 people have done it in most of the trail. I mean, some of the people might have skipped a section or two of those 500. And then we have about 50 local people who do sections every month. And we open in 2018. So you can see there's not a lot of volume at this point. You're basically most of the time walking by yourself at this point. And we were just getting going when COVID hit. In January and February of last year, we had about 100 people signed up to do the full trail each month, and an additional 50 doing, sections. So about 150 people were on the trail.
Wait till the Germans find out. I hope people start learning German because they like to be first to find a trail. That's for sure. So let's talk about, I noticed on the website that you have different sections. So if people can't do the whole thing or they don't want to do certain sections, you can do that. Why don't you start us and kind of walk us through the experience?
Great. So I decided to do it from the Pacific to the Caribbean, as I mentioned, because I wanted to end on my birthday in the Caribbean. And so I set out on the first part. When you leave the Manuel Antonio area, you go into the palm oil plantation area. Palmatica let us do the trail through their plantation areas. And there's some really beautiful things. There's this little area called Finca Anita. And what you have is these pastel color houses where the workers live all around a soccer field. And it's just really charming. And then you have you run into buffaloes pulling wooden carts with the palm fruit pods, which are these beautiful red color pods. And the workers are incredibly friendly. It's astounding to me. They're doing this really, really hard work, but they'll pause and talk with you, and they seem very relaxed, enjoying what they're doing. And in the palm trees, you find the capuchin monkeys. And not this time, but the previous time that I had been there with a group, the adolescent capuchins were doing this incredible show for us. So, that whole section of going through the palm plantations is really lots of fun. And what we did this time, as we passed all the little towns in that first section, which is basically flat, it's gravel and flat, and what can be very humid during the summer months. There was a nice breeze, so we didn't have much, but we would stop and we would say to people, we're walking to the Caribbean, why don't you come with us? And they were all very nice. They say, oh, okay, go ahead, we'll catch up with you. That's what the people said. It's basically a very friendly experience. After that, you start climbing into the mountains, and you basically start having these incredibly beautiful views of the Pacific coastline, lots of birds, lots of rushing water. You begin to see a little bit of coffee. So we climb and we climb and we climbed, but we split it up in several days. And there's some beautiful waterfalls. We stayed at a place where they have this really beautiful waterfall. We leave early in the morning. So for about the first hour and a half, you have this incredible amount of birds singing. And it's very, very peaceful. It's very beautiful. And we get up to a place where we really love. It's a little hut where they make the most wonderful lunch, and they have these incredible views. And they grow this thing that is called hearts of palm, the hearts of palm.
Yep, familiar with that.
They grow that, and they serve you this picadillo, which is basically, I don't know, how would you say? I'm sure you know, Kit, what the picadillos are. They sort of chop everything up, and it's served cold.
Don't we call it pico de gallo? No?
Well, pico de gallo is when you do the picadillo with tomatoes and onions. But you can do the same thing with many different things. They do it with all the different roots, and they do it with the hearts of palms, and it is just delicious. And these people were going to close up when we ran into them one time when we were doing the exploratory work. And they say, they've been interviewed by TV here, and says, we were about to give up until we met the people from El Camino de Costa Rica. And we've been able to stay open. So basically, for the past 4 years, they've been able to stay open because of the hikers that come by and have lunch there. So these are the kinds of experiences that just really are rewarding for us.
Definitely, because you are staying sometimes in people's homes, and sometimes you might just be, from what I understand, just putting your sleeping bag under a shelter of some kind, and they're actually doing the cooking for you lots of times. So the infrastructure is basically the families and the small businesses.
That's right.
And it may not even be small business. It may be the family that has started a small business to accommodate the hikers. Am I mistaken there or not?
No, that's right. There are several places like that. We have several homestays where the people have built a platform for hikers to put their tents, but they cook dinner and breakfast for them. And we have a town right in that area I was just telling you about, that first section, that's called Naranjillo, and it's by the river Naranjo. And we basically help the community, the whole community, set up a camp. And so they've built the platforms. We've donated the tents and the sleeping bags and the inflatable, which I understand people don't really like, mattresses. And we work with them each time to improve the qualities. And they've built showers and bathrooms. And the women in the town cook the dinners. The men set up the tents. So it's this whole town that has this new source of income. During the years during the time when there's coffee, picking the coffee, they pick coffee. And then, of course, that doesn't happen all year round. Then this other source of income helps them get through the year. So that's another example. But there's also a lot of really nice lodges. People have been improving their lodges, and there's some really beautiful ones. Just in that section in Esquipulas, the first town where you would sleep, they've built up their lodge, they've built new platforms, and this is all basically private sector responding to an anticipated demand for lodging. And we're just thrilled that that's how it's happening, because it's very organic and it's very much, the local people doing it. It's not Marriott or, some other, but although nothing wrong with Marriott.
It's organic like that. And this is an evergreen podcast. So we're recording this in January of 2021. So if you're listening to this 10 years from now, check the website, because right now, while you're going to be staying often in rustic locations, and maybe 2-star would be an average with an occasional more luxury place, 10 years from now, if you happen to be listening to this, you might have the whole spectrum from 2-star to 5-star, who knows? So just keep that in mind that this is being recorded in 2021.
So then right after that first section, we get into the coffee region, as I mentioned, and these are beautiful fields, the coffee, the hills filled with coffee plants and the plantain that's used for shade. And it's just hill after hill of this beautiful, and this is Tarrazú, which is where the really high quality coffee of Costa Rica comes from. And so you're walking through their fields, you see there's indigenous people that come from Panama and Nicaragua, and they're very colorful attire. So it's very picturesque. I mean, many of you have seen any of the primitive paintings from Colombia or Costa Rica. You're basically in one of those paintings as you go through that. And finally, you get up to this highest point where there's these cabins. They have fireplaces, but they're not set up right. So basically, you need to you use a lot of blankets at that point. But it's sort of unique to be in Costa Rica and to be in this beautiful. The vistas are spectacular in these cabins up in it's called Cerro Alto. Okay, so then we start going down, and the next section is basically rainforest, deep rainforest trails that are, over small streams, and the quetzals are there, the bellbird, which is nearly extinct species. You can hear them. They're very difficult to see, but they're there. And this is a beautiful forest. It's called Palo Verde del Guarco Forest Reserve, and you have 2 days walking through there. And in the middle of those days is this wonderful lodge called Verdesana, developed by a young Tico who's struggling to keep it up. But the cabins are so beautifully done. He's got such taste, and it's vegetarian, really healthy food. But every once in a while, if you ask, he'll serve some local trout for you. And he's just a wonderful person, and his father is a wonderful person, and his brother, who's a musician. So you get into this whole dream of this local family. But that's a highlight lodge.
It reminds me that I saw too on the itineraries and the PDFs on your website that you had some optional excursions, I guess is a good word for it, to either take a yoga class or a cooking class, so that they have all these other different ways that you can interact with the locals and help support their little micro business along this
exactly
trail.
No, so there you've hit it right, and right there they have the yoga option there, and they have a young Tico who went to China and learned the gong meditation. The sound.
Yes.
So he does that there, and it's a wonderful thing if you can call ahead and says, "Oh, we would like a session with the gong," and the place where you have it is so beautiful. The setting is, you have rushing streams and beautiful flowers, so you have that, and also in that area of the coffee that we just went through, young entrepreneurs that are trying to grow the coffee in a new organic way and package it and serve it. They can do coffee tasting for you. And again, what I like is that these are young Ticos starting to dream, and you can be part of it. You can be part of it. So yes, that's a good point that you're making.
And that's only going to get more and more developed as people, because it's a new concept for people. And so as it starts to ferment in their minds, they might come up with other ways. I remember in Bhutan, they were doing a similar thing, not on a hiking trail, but they wanted to figure out some way that small communities could take part of this new tourism thing. And people want to understand cultures when they travel. And this is like the perfect marriage for me. I haven't been this excited about a trail, and I can't remember how long.
That's great. In this area, because we're still pretty high up in the mountains. There are people, well, mulberries are like all over the place. And this is a big industry there in terms of mulberries. They do all sorts of things with the mulberries there. There's also grenadines and Asian pears. There's a young man who's growing these Asian pears up there. And they are so delicious. I think I sent you a photo of my munching into one because it was so good. There's also a family, and it's the woman who's driving this business, hydrangeas. Now, I had hydrangeas in my home in Washington, D.C., so I didn't think much of it the first time I went through, but this time we went in and we started chatting with her. And she's got this whole history and mythology related to hydrangeas that was really astounding. And they give lunch there, and they have this beautiful, it almost looks like a German beer garden. You sit outside and they serve you lunch and they talk about this hydrangea dream of theirs and the history and all that. And so all of that is in that area because this is like sort of a high mountain area. So you've got this different type of things. And the people are incredibly nice. And this area is incredibly safe. It just seems like everybody knows each other. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to last, but it just feels like a really nice place to be on Earth. So wait a minute. So I had already come through the forest down to what's called the Orosi Valley. And the Orosi Valley is very close to San Jose, and it's a slightly more wealthy area. And they have thermal waters. There's this beautiful thermal water place where you can have lunch and spend the afternoon. And we did. We had lunch and we spent the afternoon taking care of our muscles in the thermal waters. And it was very nice. This is near Orosi. And there's a very nice place called Orosi Lodge where we stayed. And it's owned by some expat Germans that have been here for many, many years. I think they've been here for about 30 years. And the food is really delicious. But there's lots of lodges. There's a lot of lodges in that area. And you have the history of Costa Rica is really centered in that area of Orosi. You have the oldest colonial church there and a museum with all the 16th century objects. So that's a nice area, the Orosi Valley. And then we start up the mountains again, and we go to a part that has the Tapanti Valley and the Talamanca Mountains. And so there's this incredible silence as you go through that part again. And again, a lot of rushing water, a lot of birds, we only saw the footprints of the tapirs and the pumas through that area, but that's very beautiful. And we go to a place that we love. It's called El Copal, and it's owned by a community. It's a community cooperative that own this lodge, but it's very comfortable. They have solar heated hot water. And people of the cooperative are the ones who actually do the cooking. And I love it because you sit in this, I think I also send you a picture, it's the one with all the candles, a lodge where you see all the candles. And here you have birders from all over the world coming to stay at this place. It's very primitive. It's just, a wooden lodge. They get volunteers to come and paint every once in a while. And people come because of the rare species of birds, of which I don't know enough about to be able to talk to you about it. But what we see is a lot of toucans, incredible variety of hummingbirds.
And the colors. Hummingbirds can be huge too. I mean, I'm used to these teeny little things, but the places I've been to that had hummingbird feeders, like, whoa. The bird colors in Costa Rica are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they're like fluorescent.
Yes.
They're fluorescent. Yeah. And so we did what we usually do. We hire a local bird expert who comes with their telescope. And what's really great, because you've walked all this way, you don't exactly want to go walking more, right off the porch of El Copal, you see like 45 different species of birds. It's like extraordinary. So it's a real treat to have that be added into your trekking experience with very little ease. I mean, with his telescope and give you this 2-hour tour, it's a great experience. And I love the women who cook because they're always giggling in the kitchen. You're sitting there and they're just wonderful. And then you ask them and they tell you some story that they're remembering. It's just a wonderful experience.
Nice. So from this bird area, where do we go next?
You go to the sugar cane culture and you go down from the mountain there, and then you've got like 2-3 days of sugarcane fields, but lots of rivers, so it's not like this horrible heat or anything like that. And it's not at sea level yet. You're about, I think, 600 meters, so it's still fairly cool.
Like 1,000 feet almost, or roughly.
Yeah, exactly. And there you have new lodges that has come up. A family in Pejibaje, which is that fruit. Do you know Pejibaje, Kit?
Explain that, because I saw that word several times.
Yeah, so the town is named after the fruit, or the fruit after the town. I should probably know, but I don't. And it's this fruit that is incredibly nutritious. It's got a sort of purple skin, and inside is orange. And the University of Costa Rica has, always is telling the ticos, eat your pejibajes, because it's got incredible range of nutrients and low caloric. But it's funny, they eat it with mayonnaise. They boil it and they cut it, and then in the little hole that's left by the seed, they put mayonnaise. But I make a tomato and pejibaje cream soup that is really good. So anyway, I should send you the recipe.
Yes, please do. Put it on the website. And I'm going to put a lot more photos than normal, because it's just so beautiful and so diverse that my normal, dozen or so photos doesn't do justice. So we have to put them all on.
So then we leave the sugarcane area, which is about 3 days, and we get to the big challenge of the trail. And the big challenge of the trail is the magical territory of the Cabecar indigenous people. First, you have to cross this beautiful river, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's called Rio Pacuare.
I've actually rafted that twice.
You rafted it, yes. Isn't it wonderful?
I loved it. In fact, I brought my sister back. I said, this time we're going to stay in the jungle overnight, because it was just such a magical, beautiful, the prettiest rafting trip I believe I've ever taken.
Right. So I mean, that is one of those side things that one can take a day and do the rafting. And then right off of the river, you can climb up it. And it's only about 4 kilometers. You can do it in an hour. You climb up to the indigenous village through which we pass. And we have a very strong relationship with them. And this is a relationship that we've developed for about 5 years already. And we got New Zealand funds to build with them a cultural space for their traditions. And this is one of the things we are most pleased with. They call it Casas Cosmogónicas, and I think you see some pictures there. And we worked with them. They built it. They built it with their traditional methods of building. We got solar illumination and special solar powered lanterns so that you can look closely at the objects. We worked with an archaeologist from the Museum of the Central Bank of Costa Rica, and together with the community. They are very proud of their community. And we do have a video of this, but it's really thanks to New Zealand funds that were donated to be able to make this possible. And then a local cooperative of Costa Rica gave some funds to improve the trail from the river up to the town, to the village. So it's a great experience, and that's right on the Camino. But then after that, you have 19.6 kilometers with 900 meters ascent, or 836 meters ascent and 710 meters descent, all within those 19 kilometers. So that's the most challenging part. But like I said, if I can do it, most people can do
Right.
it.
And everybody's got the training episodes to help get their bodies in shape, and it makes it for a great inspiration to do that. No,
Exactly. And you've now, see, this is why I also did it from the Pacific, because by that time I had been walking 4 hours a day and climbing every once in a while 700 meters. And so by the time I hit that section, I was confident I could do it. But you need an indigenous guide, and you probably want the guide that knows you, that has been with you the rest of the trail, so between them, you can really do it. When you start on the Atlantic, this is your third day. So you would have to come, better trained to ascend, to go up 836 meters in one day and 700.
And on that section, are you on rural road or are you on trail?
No. Yeah, this is a forest trail, narrow forest trails with lots of mud and roots of trees. You're basically using the roots of trees as you're stepping over roots of trees. This is a dense primary forest trail. Crosses 5 rivers. One you cross is the Pacuare. You cross on a basket. It's a pulled basket. You sit in the basket and, your guides pulled you across the river. 2 others, there's enough stepping stones where you don't have to take your shoes off and you sort of balance on the stepping stone. And the other 2s, you actually have to take your shoes and socks off and wade up to your thigh. So it's quite an experience. It takes about 9 hours because of all the taking off and putting on because obviously when you put back your shoes and socks, you need to make sure that your feet are very dry so that you don't get blisters.
I'm going to put a link in the show notes to how to safely cross a river, because that's actually a really good skill in case the water levels are high. Because that's can be one of the more difficult things that people don't really think about, and all of a sudden they're confronted with it. And just so you know what to do in case the water levels are up to your thigh and not to your knee. So I'll put a link in the show notes to that, and as well as to previous episode on Costa Rica. I'm sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to.
That's great. That's a very good point. I mean, we insist that one go with trained guides at this point, though we get a lot of requests. A lot of people want to do it on their own, and I understand, but it's not ready for that yet. It's not sufficiently well marked. We do have it blazed. We have blazes. We have some signage of the local birds in the different sections. And we have some signage, these wooden arrow things. And we're just starting to do the cement markers similar to Compostela. Mm-hmm. So this is all evolving. Eventually, there'll be enough people doing it and enough local people who know how to direct people that people will be able to do it on their own. By now, you really need a guide. The guide of the expedition. And during this section of the indigenous people's lands and the forest reserve that I spoke about, you need the local people to be able to guide you through it because it's primary forest.
Reasons too, I think that would be important. Number one, you're probably not going to have cell service, and your guide, I saw that you do have ways that if there is an emergency of any kind, they've figured out ways to contact somebody to get assistance. And as beautiful as Costa Rica is, there are some dangerous insects and animals. A local guide knows what to do and knows how to keep you safe. So, like I said, until this is a more established trail in particular, and a lot of the critters get away from the trail because of the traffic, it's a good idea to have that local knowledge with you.
Exactly. Yes. And the main thing is that you call 911. I mean, really that is the main thing that you must do, but they know to do that, and they know how to get the horses to take people out of these 2 sections, the forest reserve in Palo Verde and this section. Both, if there was an injury, would be with horses that would be taken out. But they know how to do this. They really know how to do this. And we're confident of that. But for example, I wanted to see a fer-de-lance.
And that's a very dangerous snake if you're not familiar with that. Tell us about that.
There's a couple of venomous snakes, and this is one of them. And this is one that won't do anything to you unless you step on it or unless it's sick, right? So I really wanted to see one, and was able to see one in the indigenous territory. It was a small one that was sleeping, and our guide saw it. I would never have seen it. I would never have seen it. They're so well camouflaged. But he saw it, and we were all able to take photos. We left it sleeping, and it's a beautiful snake. The coral snakes are also in several places. But again, I mean, the main thing about, you need to look where you're putting your foot. You need to look where you're holding on to. You need to be very careful before you hold on to a branch. Make sure that there's not one of those ants that are called bolas, because it's like a bullet. If they bite you, you feel like a bullet has hit you, or a spider, or one of the
There's even a
smaller
toad.
snakes.
You have a toad that's dangerous as well, as I recall.
Yes, well, but I mean, the toad.
You just don't put your hands where you can't see.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so we have photos. We took photos of poison darts, frog.
They're beautiful. They're beautiful.
They are beautiful. They're just so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And most of the animals run away from you. They don't run at you, but you still need to be very, very careful.
Right. Because it's just, if you surprise them by putting your hand where you can't see, so you don't see them, and you've startled them, and their natural defense is to bite or do whatever they've got to do as their defensive mechanism. So
that's right. That's right.
Beautiful, challenging section. What's next?
And so we end up at the highest point near the Atlantic, near this park that's called Parque Nacional Barbilla, that no one knows about, not even many ticos know about, because it's an investigation park. It's where they're studying the habitat of the jaguars. And the biological corridor Paso del Jaguar we go right through it. And it's a future, it's something that, we're taking the hikers so that they see the videos of the infrared cameras and stuff like that, just giving that extra experience for them. But not even the ticos know about this beautiful park. It's just a beautiful. And we have a woman who the husband is tico, and she's from Sweden, and her father was the one who discovered the national park Barbilla, and has studied it, and all the studies come from her father. And her father's partner was a tico man who had a son, and the father had a daughter, and a happy ending. They got married, and she lives there, and she's raised her 3 daughters, homeschooling. They now are going to college in Sweden, and she has a little lodge there. So for New Year's Eve, we were able to stay there. We weren't able to share with the family because of COVID, but it's a beautiful little cabin. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. Wonderful time. But after that 19.6 kilometer walk, I get there, and it's freezing cold water, but apparently that's good for the muscles. So, but we really enjoyed it. And then the final part is coming down, and you start seeing the Atlantic, you start seeing the Caribbean, and it's very exciting. And it's a sharp drop, 700, and I forget something meters drop through muddy dirt roads, some cattle, but the amount of flowers in that section was just astounding, and little colorful little houses that obviously people have as retreats, or I don't know, some people just live in these beautiful, beautiful little places. And then the final section is the section that we insist that you have a car following you. There's some adolescent social unrest on that last part. Very flat, 24 kilometers. It seemed like it was never going to end. And but there you have basically the banana plantations, and they have their own beauty. You have the people that pull the bunch of bananas. They run through pulling them, and it's really quite something to see. And then finally we get to the Caribbean, and you get to a place called Muelle Goshen, and there you have to get a boat, and a boat takes you through these beautiful canals. The canals are just spectacular, filled with reptiles and birds. And you get to the little island. It's on the other side of the canal, to a place called Reserva Pacuare. And there's where the leatherneck turtles come and nest. And so if you come to the trail between March and June, you will have this extraordinary experience where they'll take you with infrared light at night to experience the laying of eggs of these leatherneck. And it's an investigatory reserve. So you have kids, well, you used to have kids, now we were the only ones there, from all over the world who come do the research on the leatherneck turtles. And the food isn't that great because it's really more for investigation and for these hordes of volunteer kids from all over the world. But because we were the only ones there, it actually was quite good this time. And they have this huge wooden house that they've converted into a eco lodge. But like you say, it's really a 2-star. It's not fancy.
But it may be, if somebody's listening to this in the future, there may be other accommodations. So just remember the time frame that we're recording this. The trail itself is less than 2 years old.
Exactly. But this one is right on the ocean. On the other side of the canal, there's another lodge called Lidio Lodge, which Americans don't tend to go there, but Europeans go there a lot. And it's maybe 3-star. And then the person we partner with, the local person that we partner, he has cabins that we have been working with him to improve. And his wife does crafts with coconut shells and things like that. And we have a whole relationship with them. We also, with Canadian volunteers that have come several times, we were able to fix up their local clinic, which the doctors were threatening to stop coming because it was deteriorated. So we put electricity and we put rainwater. We filtered rainwater system. And this was done with funds and work of volunteers from Canada. This wonderful organization, Developing World Connections is called. And they go all over the world, but they have a relationship with us and they've done some great work. And the kids come and they work really hard. They work like from 7 to 7, but they feel like they're in paradise. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for everybody. And we love them and they've been incredibly generous. And so anyway, so that's that little town of Barra de Pacuare. And there's a similar set of lodges. There's this green gold lodge on the other island, Parismina, Barra de Parismina. And it's all interconnected by these canals. Very similar to Tortuguero. Have you been to Tortuguero?
No, that's one reason for sure we need to get back. And while we're talking about Tortuguero, which translates into turtle, they may nest during that time frame, but are you also allowed to see them hatch?
Yes. So there's hatching, and there's also, you can go at any time of year, you can go and see how they're taking care of the eggs, and they do certain types of tests to see how, the sand, if there's any adverse chemicals, and they take care. So you can see the hatcheries and you can see them hatch also. So all of that happens. Pretty much, I think there's some months where not much is going on, but the rest of the time something is going on. And so this part, the end of the Camino, is basically the southern part of Tortuguero that hasn't been developed, that is still owned by very local or these investigations places. That's it.
Like when you finished your journey, that's quite an accomplishment. What did it feel like?
Well, I wasn't sure whether I was going to be jumping up and screaming with joy, but it felt different. It felt like this calm satisfaction, as though you had taken all of that experience inside your soul. And it was now part of you, and you wanted to cherish it. I don't know whether that conveys it, but I felt thrilled, of course, but it felt like this deep quiet satisfaction is the best way I can explain it.
That's lovely.
So,
because we're going long, I'm going to turn this into a 2-part episode. So today we've talked about the trail itself, and on part 2, let's talk a little bit about the logistics and what we can expect, what we need to prepare for. So when I come back in 2 weeks, we'll cover all the logistics of hiking the new Camino de Costa Rica. And if you don't want to wait 2 weeks, I've gone ahead and posted this on the Active Travel Adventures website so you can download it directly from there. Or if you have subscribed, you'll get it automatically in your feed. Thank you so much, Conchita, for coming on the program and telling us about this wonderful trail. I'm guessing you're as excited about the Camino as I am, and I can't wait to go. I am waiting with bated breath to hear from the guides about it because I want to do all the different options that are available, and we're just going to make it a super fun trip. So again, please let me know if you're interested in going. And one way that you're going to get first knowledge about anything new is by getting my once a month email. And remember, I said it's once a month. I don't spam you. You can unsubscribe anytime. It comes directly from me to you. And that's why we have a 2-way communication, because a lot of people write back and let me know what's going on. And I love that. In this email, you'll get access to whatever new travel planners and downloads from the Adventure Travel Show podcast that have come out, plus access to all the previous ones. And sometimes I'll throw in some special deals and some tips and all that. Again, no spam promise. You can unsubscribe at any time. You can get onto the list by going to activetravelaladventures.com and hitting the contact button. You can email me directly and ask me. Again, that's kit@activetravelaladventures.com. So there's lots of ways to reach me. I look forward to hearing from you. I appreciate you listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.